You're listening to the Radcast, a top 25 worldwide business podcast. If it's radical, we cover it. Here's your host, Ryan Alford.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the latest edition of the Radcast. I'm Ryan Alford, your host of your number one marketing and business show on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate you wherever, however, wherever, and whenever you're listening to this show. We say if it's radical, we're covering it. And today, we're talking about radical scaling. We're talking about effectiveness. We're talking about value creation. We're talking to best-selling author Lee Benson. What's up, Lee?
Hey, Ryan. Good to be here, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, scale or bail, baby. I like to scale. I've been scaling business forever. I was like, Cameron said, hey, this guy's sounds really interesting. I think he'd add a lot of value. And ironically, I think that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. So, how do you get to be known as the business scaling master?
For me, it's all about value creation. I've heard CEOs ask the question, what is my primary job? And I said, well, your job is to continually increase the value of your organization and over time accelerate the growth in that. And everything's healthier when you do it, right?
Oh, yeah. You keep everybody happy depending on your business. The companies I've worked for, I'm an entrepreneur, I think, by heart, but I've worked for other people for 17 years. And when things were growing and efficient and value was adding up, life seemed to be better. That's all I know.
Yeah, a lot better. And, it's interesting. Okay, ask the question, what's the job of a CEO or founder or, startup, leader, whatever that is? That's great. Now, if you ask everybody else in the organization, hey, how do you create value for this organization? What would they say? And most of the time you get a job description answered. They don't even really know. So imagine creating an environment where, the most important number that talks about value of an organization is, profit or cash flow, some version of that. And every other leader with their team had a number that clearly described the value they create, or another way of saying it, what's one number that says above all others, you and your team are winning or losing the game, and it drives the majority of the right behaviors. It's no wonder that every organization that adopts this way of running at it, I call it the MIND methodology, which stands for most important number and drivers, the results start accelerating within 3 months. It's wildly simple, and I think that's the whole point. You and I were talking before this about complexity and how that can be a value creation killer.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there listening to you talk, Lee, and I manage a company, and I'm like, I think we as leaders, and you should never, and it's maybe more as people, hopefully not as leaders, but as people, we assume that everyone knows what the goal is or what value or success looks like. And I don't think most companies, I'll even lump myself in there, do a good enough job of being clear on what success, and I think they do, like in our business, new business is good. Okay, we understand that. But beyond that, there's a lot of other smaller numbers, and there's, things that add up to the success. And I don't know that, I think about the companies I've worked for, I'm like, they just didn't communicate that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're right. They make the assumption, or we do, that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing and they should be creating value. We're investing all this money in payroll and we want a return on it. We never connect the dots for them, at least not very effectively. And, to your comment about, hey, new business is good. Well, not all new business is necessarily good, when it comes in. But I think you're hitting totally right on the point here. We assume they're connecting the dots, and they're not. And because they're not, I would argue that 90% of employees throughout organizations of any size don't even know how to set an effective goal.
Yeah, that's, I want to get down that path. Lee, let's I always like to set the table, so what made you the scale expert and so damn smart about all this stuff? Let's give everybody a little bit of your history and background.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good 40-year overnight success story. It just happens so quick, right? You know where it goes. But the way I've started talking about this is I went from 6 years old being asked unsolicited by a neighbor, "Hey, would you pull weeds in my garden for 25 cents an hour?" And back then, you could buy 2 candy bars and have change. It was a good deal for a little kid. And then I started shoveling snow. 50 cents is 30 minutes of work, for a driveway and a sidewalk, and then a paper out, then 4 paper outs, and then a dishwasher, busboy, cook. And then in the 1980s, I played in a band, over 1,000 nights. That's how I made most of my money back then. And then I started, setting up businesses in the early 90s. I'm on my 7th business. I've started from scratch. And I got on what I'd like to call this value creation struggle cycle. And I think struggle is good, and we should learn to trust and value struggle because we identify a capability we want, we struggle to get that capability, it builds our confidence, we use it to create value, and if we just stay on that path, I never got off, and I'm just passionate about how do we get teams to work better together to create more and more value over time. And that's what led to exits from a few $1,000,000 to well into 9 figures. My best, I would say, material value creation days are yet to come. And it's not even so much about that for me. It's about accomplishing amazing things. And that's just a byproduct of it. But real quick, when I think about value creation, and I wrote another book I released back in April called Value Creation Kid, The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed. And in there, I talk about value creation in 3 buckets: material value creation, emotional energy value creation, and spiritual value creation. And I think the scarcest commodity on the planet is positive emotional energy, because when that's operating on 9 or 10, anything could go wrong. And it's like, no big deal, we'll get through it, it'll be fine. If it's operating on 1 or 2, you get a flat tire and it ruins your week. So value creation isn't just money, it's this whole thing. Like you and I, when we energize our teams, it's not that we come in and we think about how do I energize everybody. If we're high on our emotional energy and we're passionately talking about what's possible and productive ways to get there, it's pretty infectious. And then next thing you know, leaders in our organizations are starting to do the same thing. And then they're running without us. I like to call it, hey, we're water skiing behind them now instead of, kicking to get them out of bed in the morning.
I love that analogy. We spend a lot of time on the lake at the Alford House. I have 4 sons, and it's really fascinating. Like my mind's swirling a bit now, Lee, of roads to go down. Having children and thinking about that aspect. I'm going to table that for a second, stay with the business, and come back to it because I think it's super important. It starts. Look. Everything starts, it's like nature and nurture. Like we wonder why, things can be better. Well, if we make our kids better, the world gets better, but I digress. We'll go down that road shortly, Lee. But, think about the business thing. I was sitting there listening to you talk and I'm like, okay, when you're helping a company think about like value creation, it's interesting to me of like internal versus external. So like in our business is a service-based company. And you think of, okay, what's the internal value they bring versus sometimes the value they bring is externally pleasing clients or getting scopes of work done and things like that. I know that's really getting to the nitty gritty, but it's just where my mind went when you were talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, value creation should be for everybody involved in what you want to touch, where you want to influence the communities you're engaged with, your suppliers, the customers, the team members, the shareholders. I mean, it's really everywhere, and it's not just money, it's the whole thing. What does it feel like to be there, but in a meaty way, not in a flowery HR everybody should just be happy and float on a cloud all day kind of way. I mean, we can have cultures where self-esteem is on 10, everybody's acting like the CEO of their own role, and it just feels so good to win. It just feels amazing. And you'll never peel those people out. I think about my aerospace business. I had, when I sold it, probably 64 leaders, and I never once had a leader quit on their own. I've had to ask a few to leave because we exceeded their capabilities, but we always preserve their dignity. We help them find another job. But when you create that environment, competitors will try to poach people away. They can't, even for 20 or 30% more money, they won't take them because they love doing that so much. Well, what is that? It's the positive emotional energy. It's the self-esteem. It's the rules of engagement, the environment that we create as leaders from which everybody creates value. And in my book titled Your Most Important Number, that fully describes the mind methodology that I'm touching on here, everything is in there around how to actually create this. And one of the things that I firmly believe with adults as well as children, motivational nudges don't stand the test of time. They just don't stick. So we have to create an environment where everybody in the organization discovers their value creation superpowers, if you will, and they cultivate those over time. But sending them to a sales class or watch this video or read this book, which is what a lot of folks do to develop their team members, it's just not that effective. This is a lifelong, value creation discovering journey that everybody can do more and more and more. And, I remember on the aerospace side, hired a kid, came in, first year in sales for us. He had sold for other companies in aerospace, sold $1 million, a little bit over. And he thought, man, I've never done that before. This is incredible. I said, well, just wait for it. Let's keep developing this capability. And when I sold the company in 2016, the year prior to selling, he sold just over $40 million. This is one person. And this is super high margin work. And I know he can get to a place where he's selling billion-dollar deals, right? So there's no end to this value creation process as long as we create an environment that cultivates that, not a motivational nudge strategy. Does that resonate, Ryan?
It does. It resonates a lot. I'm thinking through, again, back to the practical application of it is in finding what adds value. There's always, some things are hard to put a number on, and then some things are crystal clear. There's the subjective measures of success, and then there's the crystal clear ones. And I think at the end of the day, what I'm hearing is once you have clarity around those things, everyone knows what their purpose is. I mean, it's kind of like, I almost think of the Stephen, purpose-driven life or whatever that is. But It's almost like that in business in a way, is if you're clear on what your purpose is, what the values are, you're delivering the value internally, but it's also swelling inside of you, this confidence, because you're having success. And if you're having success, then you're happier and you're more motivated and all these things. So it all ties together, right?
It all ties together, and when we create these rules of engagement or this environment from which everybody's creating value, when we're really clear about what it means for a leader and their team members to create value and drive the majority of the right behaviors, they'll perform significantly better. Because like we talked about earlier, if we're not fully connecting the dots, we can't expect the majority of the team members to actually do it. So they're just doing stuff and they're creating goals that don't matter. I've heard CEOs say, hey, everybody's hitting all their quarterly goals, but the company isn't going anywhere. Well, they're not aligned to creating value. And I talked to we're starting up a new client, and I still do a lot of this work every day. I want to be on the front lines. I don't want to be so detached from it that I'm one of those gurus that talks about it and couldn't do the job to save themselves, which is probably 80% of the folks on the road out there on the speaking circuit. So here we are, and they said, hey, at first we thought we're going to try the mind methodology on our own, and this is a decent sized company. We're going to DIY it, and it's okay. And they said, but we know it'll go faster with you helping us. And they said they really started getting stuck at just senior leaders with their functions having conversations around what would be a number that says above all others we're winning or losing the game and drives the majority of the right behaviors. What would be that most important number? And I said, well, isn't it amazing you're finally having a discussion around how you create value, as not only as a company, but as a function to support it? This is fantastic. It's no wonder that results accelerate within just a couple of months of starting to go down this road. Literally for 100% of organizations, there's a couple over the years, and I've worked with a lot of them, that it didn't work. And the only reason it didn't work is the senior team was looking for a silver bullet and wouldn't own anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it makes total sense because I was sitting here, thinking again, how much of this, once you create the system process and you make these things clear, you still got to execute, baby. You got to the people have to get it done, and you can provide clarity. You can provide absolute expectations or clear grading scale for what adds value in helping them. But then you still got to have the right people, because at some point, no system can help either cancerous toxicity within someone or an organization or those kind of things. I'd be curious how you balance all of that when dealing with it.
Yeah. There's a chapter in my book on strategy, and it says, hey, you've completed your strategy. Everybody's excited. Congratulations. You're 3% of the way there. 97% is actually going to be executing on this. And the thing I love about the methodology is that every team, every function will have their most important number. They'll have a set of categories of work that we call drivers, that they should be good at leveraging to continually improve their most important number. So when you look at every leader and you can see whether they're on track, at risk, or behind, or hopefully even overdriving their most important number at any point in time, and you can see the best work they're doing to stay on top of that, it exposes everything. It exposes who's capable of doing it, where assumptions wrong, et cetera. And it does it very quickly. And then the team can make a choice. Some actually self-select out and say, I'm not getting it done. I'm in charge of the marketing function and I'm not generating enough qualified leads, coming in. And we have a clear definition of what a qualified lead is. And I'm holding the whole company back. And so we bring somebody in that's capable to do it. And there's other times where, the CEO might say, yeah, but, Bob or Susie's been with us for a really long time. We can't let him go. And I said, okay, well, then you're making a conscious choice to limit the growth and the value of your organization based on what this individual can do, instead of everybody's rising constantly. And I think about the aerospace company that I had from day one with 3 employees, counting myself. I've changed the senior team out 5 times, and wow. They didn't all leave the company. A couple of them did, but for the most part, they went off to do other things where they could really add a lot of value. And I remember when I sold it, I would give small pieces of the company away along the way, and it was nice giving out checks to 13 different individuals from a couple $1 million to into the $30 million range. Because they were thinking and acting like owners. And especially when it came to not having an ego, I have to have a seat at the top table and be there. All they cared about was accelerating the value of the entire organization, because they knew this is what's going to be best for them. And it was pretty cool. It worked out really well for them.
Yeah. I mean, said an important word there. I would imagine with a lot of this, and ego, drives a lot of, I think, the behaviors at the senior levels. And I don't know, it's not accountability as much as it's people I've earned this, or I expect this, or all of those things that kind of come with it. And I would imagine I'm going to ask a question and pontificate a bit, that some of your biggest challenge may be in implementation. And I'm sure once they've hired you, or you're helping an organization, or they're implementing something like this, they've bought in. Mm-hmm. But as humans, we naturally, and I think some CEOs are this way, they want to do what they think is right by the employees and by the team on an emotional level. And it doesn't always come with the filter of rationality around what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And I imagine you run into that sometimes.
Well, the process itself will expose everything. And on the very few occasions where a CEO didn't like that, they would blow the whole thing up. And even a year into an engagement where the profit is 4-folded for the company, they don't have the same influence that they want. People aren't looking to them for every answer, because now the whole senior team is doing it. We're helping with it, et cetera. And it freaks them out, even though they're making 4 times the money, and they blow the whole thing up. So it can happen. I'm super sensitive to that. And, I'm going to be very candid, but always, caring and understanding. And everybody's on their own value creation journey. And you see a senior team, it could be 4 people, it could be 12 people. How do we guide this whole thing in a direction to create more and more value when everybody's at a different place in their personal and professional development path? So it's, yes, we see that. Now, for the CEOs that aren't quite ready, and even the ones that are ready for it, one of my solutions for that is I started, and I think this is something significantly better than traditional CEO forum groups out there, but I started something called Execute, and we limit it to 8 CEOs. And every 2 months, we get a full deep dive into each member's business. So we meet 1 day a month, 6.5 hours. And it's incredible what happens with these CEOs and how they accelerate the value of their organization. We know so much about each other's business that when they bring an issue in most other groups, because you know so little, you address the issue. In our group, most of the time, it's a symptom of something else going on. And we look at that group and we say, metaphorically, this is as though we've invested half of all of our retirement money in this conglomerate, and we want to make sure we get a really good return. So what do we want to know? What do we want to see happening? What risk are we not seeing that we can get in front of? And that really develops the CEOs to accelerate the value of their organization so much faster, because we keep them at that critical point in their business that moves constantly, sometimes at every point in time. And then usually within 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, they're fully doing some version of this mind methodology in their own organization. So I found that that's a great starting point for CEOs to come in there, and it's less threatening on the ego side to do it. And they love being in that competitive environment and that accountability environment with other CEOs. Does that make sense, Ryan?
It makes a lot of sense. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm in marketing, so I like to title things and like what they are. It sounds like almost like a virtual board of, like in a way, but maybe, the boards can even get incestuous a little bit too, and like sometimes not as adding the value that it needs to if there's, if depending on who's in it. But it sort of sounds a little bit like having that a virtual board or a virtual council, of people that you can go to. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, is that? Well, that's what I'm hearing.
It's way more of a virtual senior leadership team.
Yeah.
Because in all the other groups, and I've been members of groups with overlap for probably 40 years, the groups can be 12, as big as 18 members. And once a month, one of the senior CEOs gets to make a presentation. They all have an issue processing process. State your issue. Everybody asks a clarifying question, and then they give you a solution and you move on. Well, because you can see less than 10% into each other's business, you can't use 80, 90% of your brain power to help them. You get to use 10%. And in this, you get to use over 80% of your brain power to help. So it's a value creation or value of the organization accelerating senior leadership team that you have, this sort of extended senior leadership team, and so much more powerful for those that are in growth mode. And all the other ones just say, get a bunch of bright leaders in the room and amazing things will happen. But there's no process for them. And in our groups, we follow the mind methodology with a collection of CEOs.
Smart. A part of our core business is helping leadership do personal branding. And I feel like I'd want the list of people that have done your stuff, because then they're out of the weeds. Like you said, they get maybe a little soft or sensitive because maybe they're not having to do or be in the weeds like they were, and their team doesn't come to them for the things. But, as part of the leadership of CEOs working on the business, in the business, I'd like to know who that is, because I think that's we could help those CEOs, because they can help the company by elevating their own profile if they're the right person. I mean, there's a lot of caveats, but firmly believe in the more known and out there the CEO is, if they have the capacity and are the right person, the better it is for the company.
Yeah, in the right way, I completely agree. And every business is different, and it's credibility. So as potential customers are looking to do business with this organization, everything goes better. I completely agree. And even for our groups, kind of to your point, I would say 1 out of 3 or 4 that say they want to join qualify from a persona standpoint. Like, you can't be a narcissist. You have to be in growth mode. You have to believe in personal and professional growth. You can't know everything. And so it doesn't take me more than 10, 15 minutes of talking to these individuals to figure out kind of where they're at. And I only want folks that are going for it, that are just all about personal and professional growth.
So, I couldn't go any further in the episode today without talking about our favorite sponsor, Caldera Labs. This is premium men's skincare. And look, I need all the secret weapons I can get. I'm 46 this year, and, these fine lines are starting to show. But the only thing keeping me fine is Caldera Labs. Skincare, got face lotion, and this body bar. Let me tell you, it lathers up perfect. But in all seriousness, you have to rub in all the lotions, and then you use this stuff called the serum. This might be the serum of the gods. I'm telling you, like, this stuff is awesome. I never thought you could have the glow in the morning. I was like, everybody talks about that. I watched the women's commercials. They talk about this, the glow they get. And I'm like, that doesn't happen. But no, it does happen with Caldera Labs. All natural ingredients, perfect for the skin, and it makes you look younger. I feel at least 5 years younger. I mean, we're making no claims here, but I'm telling you, this is the best skincare I've ever used. I only promote what I support and what actually works. And if you use Rad Ryan, you'll get 20% off. If you go to calderalabs.com and you learn more about their products, I'm telling you, you will thank me for it. And look, if you're young, you need to get ahead of the game so you avoid the wrinkles. If you're my age, you're just trying to hide a few. And if you're a little older, you're trying to hide a lot. And let me tell you, this will help. Makes your skin feel great. Mine's never felt better, never looked better. And it's all thanks to Caldera Labs, the official skincare partner of the Radcast. Yep. So let's talk kids a little bit. Where did that originate from, wanting to help kids and seeing, you obviously started, I think, at the professional level, but working your way back and seeing the impact that this approach could have on children?
Yeah, I know that the reason I'm here is to sort of spread this ideology of value creation. And I've been doing it in my own businesses to prove it, worked with hundreds of other organizations, thousands of leaders, proved it there, for-profit, nonprofit. And then I look at all the challenges in the world right now, and I think to myself, well, what would an ideal graduating high school senior being launched into adulthood look like? Well, they would be self-reliant. They can think critically. They want to create value in the world. They're financially competent if they choose to be, kind of like I was when I got out of high school, fully financially independent. And if we had that, they wouldn't be falling for all the craziness going on in the world right now. And just like we talked about not connecting the dots for team members in our organizations, we're not connecting the dots for kids in K-12 education. The purpose of an education is to create value in the world. It's not get a good grade, get a diploma, get a degree, get a job. In that environment, the kids are doing mostly what they think they're supposed to do, which is leading to all of this, extrinsic motivation stuff that's going on that's super unhealthy. And if they knew right out of the gate that the purpose is to create value in the world, and it's material, it's emotional, it's spiritual, let's help you discover your own value creation superpowers over time. Now it's completely different. You start building intrinsic motivation. They discover why they're here, what they're really meant to do. And we don't have all the BS out there in the world and tens of millions falling for it and creating the environment that we have. So that's what's important to me. And the book, Value Creation Kid, The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed, that subtitle, so important because parents with the best of intentions have been taking all the struggle away from kids that they can. Well, I had to struggle. You shouldn't have to. Don't you realize that struggle we went through made us these amazing value creators that we are, a lot of us? And if the concept of removing struggle was going to be so great for the kids, then the less I go to the gym, the stronger I am, the more flexible I am. It doesn't work. And so it's all about encouraging families to design in healthy struggles for children. And we lay it out in a really workable way to operationalize it within families. We call it the gravy stack method, and it's value creation, it's house rules, it's financial competency, and it's healthy struggle. And I'm following a number of low and middle income families, and wow, is it working well. And I can share a short story here in a few minutes. But that's why I'm doing it. You said it earlier, fix the kids, it makes the world a better place. Yes, that's 100% right on.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading, pre-episode, get to know you, and then hearing you talk, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it goes back to like the assumptions and simple, like it's not that complicated to think through, but we like to make it complicated, or we like to fix the problem on the back end for some reason, i.e. we want to fix the adults instead of instilling in the children.
Well said. That's 100%. 100%. And so a really short 1 minute story I'm following.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
3-part 1 minute story. Following families. So in Boston, dad texts me, read the book. Here's what my daughter, his 9-year-old daughter, told him. And he's got 2 daughters, 9 and 6. Daddy, thank you for saving the dirty dishes for me to help me with my value creation work. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Then he calls a few weeks later and he goes, well, let me tell you how value creation summer is going. And he said, it used to be my daughters would argue over who had to do the work. Now they're arguing over who gets to do the work. And the 6-year-old's getting up intentionally before the 9-year-old to walk the dog and do all that stuff. And so fast forward to last weekend, I get a call from him. We talked for about an hour. And he says, well, my 9-year-old daughter in the school she's in, on day 1, she met with a counselor. On day 2, the counselor called me and asked the question, what is value creation summer? Please tell me all about this. And she goes, I'm going to use that language with all the students that I meet with, the parents, everything. So I'm sending books back, to this counselor. So here's this simple method, middle-class family. The kids had changed the complete culture within 2 months, and the kids are talking about it in school, and faculty are paying attention. Unbelievably cool. And this is just one of many stories like that.
It's not surprising. I'm sitting here thinking, I have 4 boys, and and my wife and I are incredibly motivated people, both professional, very successful, but you tend to and we're not, I don't think we're the parents that try to make it easy for the kids as much as if we see something, we do something instead of stuff that we know the kids should do. It's not because we have our boys are great. They don't get in trouble. Grades are good. They're responsible, but it's I even catch myself rolling the trash to the street, doing something. I just do it because I'll just do it. But when I think about it, when I allow them to do it, they take, pleasure would be the wrong word, but they do see that they've added value and that they've done something. And they, like my 7-year-old, he's the youngest. And so he'll race to do some of those things like you mentioned, the girl getting up early or whatever. He'll race to do that because, he's the youngest, and I think he wants to show that he's doing something of value and adding to the household. And I think, I know we could be more intentional of that, but it's clear that kids want that. And so, and I think it gets in this messy middle of, well, I'm providing a better life for my kid than what I had versus, okay, doing the right things and creating some natural struggle and duties, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and all struggle doesn't equal trauma. Just because you're not fitting in at school very well, that's not trauma. That's social struggle. You'll build the capability and you'll be able to do it. And we lay out all of that stuff. I've got a co-author, Scott Donnell, in this book, Value Creation Kid. We lay all of it out in the book, the whole methodology, everything. And I think the key for parents, any parent listening to this, is work backwards from what you think the ideal, graduating high school senior being launched into adulthood looks like. And, I had a pretty interesting childhood, and my family is kind of dangerous and toxic. I was actually kicked out of the house at the beginning of my senior year in high school, and I was already financially independent. It was a non-event to go get my own apartment, and I slept one night in my truck. Ooh, big deal. It's like the best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life. But I started that value creation struggle cycle really early, and I never got off of that. But think about working backwards. What would that look like? The ideal launched brand new adult into adulthood. And we get that right. Wow, what's that going to do for the family? It's just going to be incredible for the strength of the family.
Yeah, no question. It's interesting going back to something you said, you know, whether it's school or like, you know, how we're bringing kids up and like their expectations of the intrinsic versus extrinsic. Mm-hmm. And I think it's on some level, it's as simple as thinking about we instead of me. And I think because when you add value, sometimes you might go, oh, well, how do I add value to myself or what I'm doing? But really, it's adding to the greater whole. And furthermore, like what you were saying, you know, with, you know, education, it used to, and I remember growing up, you know, it'd be like, you know, it's kind of like, what are you going to do for your country? Like when they were trying to get, you know, people to join the army or whatever, because like it's your duty or something. And then the same thing, like, what are you going to do to make the world a better place with your job or whatever? And at some point we just stopped talking about that. You know, it just became about, well, me and not we.
Yeah, if I can add on that, if more people understood the value of win-win value creation, they wouldn't embrace win-lose. You know, so people will use the word selfish like somehow it's bad. It's like, no, it's not. Everybody does what's in their own best self-interest, either for this life or the next. So by definition, everybody is selfish. But are you win-win or are you win-lose? And I intentionally develop everybody all the time, everywhere I go, to create more and more value in the world. And that does two things. It exposes me to opportunities that I can choose to take advantage of on the business side, new friendships that can really enrich my life, you know, et cetera. And it, you know, intrinsically, I mean, it makes me feel absolutely amazing, you know, doing that. And so it helps the business, exposes me to lots of opportunities. I feel selfishly, I want to feel great. Like even all this work around getting it right for families so the kids can launch into these amazing adults. I want to do it at scale. I want to be in 1 million households within a couple of years with this. My co-author and I talk a lot about it. Selfishly, that's going to make for a way better world for me to live in and interact with my friends, my family, everyone out there. So there's no such thing, in my opinion, as altruism or selflessness, because we're all doing it for some, you know, personal best interest, whatever that happens to be. And this has made me, you know, money's the goal. I mean, shoot, this has made me a lot of money over the years, and it'll make me way more into the future. But again, it's a byproduct of accelerating the value of my organizations and so many other, you know, clients that I work with in their organizations. I just love the work, and this is what comes from it. So this strategy makes people way more successful. Why they don't do it, it's crazy to me. I mean, there's a few that do, but it's the minority. Why do you think it is that they can't see this?
That's a marketing question, if you ask me. Marketing and positioning sometimes.
Okay. Right.
So I'll tell you this, Lee. I started in the ad agency business in 2000. I'll age myself a little bit. No one wanted, in 2001, no one wanted to carry a cell phone. Well, we came out with Can You Hear Me Now? And the rest is history. Well, in 2005, no one wanted a smartphone because it was for work and for BlackBerries. And we launched the first iPhone, and the rest is history. It was all about positioning, and it was all about UI and a lot of other things, but it was about problem solution and opening people's eyes to what it is. And sometimes it's a positioning exercise, because that's what we did with Motorola and Apple and everyone else in making smartphones attractive to non-business people. And it's an interesting exercise on the marketing positioning and human nature discovery. Like if you do old school marketing and it's not just performance marketing, put a price point on it and, hook them on, a Facebook ad. This is old school marketing. I think this positioning of getting people to understand the win-win side of it. You even said some of the terminology today, and I mean, you probably have it in all your stuff, but I think, it's fascinating. Yeah, but I will say this: there's irony for me, Lee, and I know it's purposeful. It's irony to me, and I'm sure intentional for you. How well you've done in business, and like you said, money and things that have come back to you, and the satisfaction that you get when you're just practicing exactly what you preach because of the value that you're putting out and the value that you're instilling and these thought processes that you've turned into a program. That reciprocity isn't lost on me.
Yeah, and I love that point because there's so many startup organizations out there that fail, and I think they fail because the founders just want to make a bunch of money or be on a magazine someday and not really solve a problem in the world and create real value. And I live this every single day. And way too many people, it's just about the money. It's like they value attention and money. It's like, guys, that's not going to get it for you internally. I don't know what it feels like inside for those folks, but it can't feel great.
No, it's not happiness. That's why some of the richest and most people that have the most attention are not the most happiest. And I've had 400 guests, and let me tell you, I've had celebrities and everything else, and one way or another, we get around that topic, and that intrinsic kind of, selfishness. Those people are not happy, and they at some point the light comes on, or the lights go out. If you know what I'm saying.
100%. I mean, it's about the relationships. I think it's about having, and for me, it's about this value creation spread. I'm doing it with organizations. I want to help families do it. I want the kids to do it for all the reasons we talked about. Having a clear purpose, and then what caring relationships do you have in your life? I don't have a lot of close family, and we don't have time to go into all that, but it's a pretty interesting story. But wow, do I have, direct family, but wow, I've got hundreds of folks out there that are just amazing to interact with and would run through walls for me, and I would run through walls for them. It's those relationships we build over time. That's what it's about. And you don't need a ton of money to do that. You can have a ton of money and not have any of that, like you're alluding to. And it's, where does that personal fulfillment come from? How are you figuring more stuff out or elevating your human consciousness so things get easier and more fulfilling, over time? But that's a whole new podcast that we probably need
I know. We'll have to attack that one. I think that one could be a whole hour on its own, or probably multiple hours. But Lee, where can everybody find the books, work with you, learn more about you, and all the rest?
Yeah, the best place to kind of learn about the things that we do at Execute to Win, or ETW, is to go to the website, and that is etw.com. You can find the book there, but you can also find it on 40,000 other channels, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you can get a book, you can find it. The audio book, I narrate it, and I do 25-minute interviews after every chapter for even more insight and background. And I'm actually on this podcast from my home recording studio. And when I finished narrating it, I picked up my guitar and did a 3.5-minute impromptu solo. It's at the very end of the book. So you got that at the audio book. If you want to,
nice.
If you want to go to the
I've always added value, Lee. I mean, just value on value.
Well, yeah, etw.com. You can learn about how we can get involved with an organization to help you, implement this. The last chapter in the book, which you can get on the website, is a DIY chapter. You can do it yourself. And then you can learn about our Execute CEO mastermind groups that are really different and so much better than what's out there now if you're in growth mode.
I love it, man. Well, as you say, win-win. It's a win-win. Win for the Radcast and win for our audience. I really appreciate you coming on, Lee.
Thank you, Ryan. It was great to be here with you.
Hey guys, you know where to find us, the Radcast.com. Search for Lee Benson. You'll find all of the highlight clips in the full episode today, audio, video. Go give us a like, share, and follow on YouTube. We're starting to get heavy over there. You know we're always on Instagram. I'm at Ryan Alford on all the social media platforms. We'll see you next time on the Radcast.
To listen or watch full episodes, visit us on the web at theradcast.com or follow us on social media at our Instagram account, the.rad.cast, or at Ryan Alford. Stay radical.